Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story coming out of Murid, Pakistan that's just completely wrapped in mystery. We're going to break down a source vlog that makes some incredibly serious claims about a violent clash, a supposed media blackout, and the high-stakes political reaction that followed.
Okay, so this whole thing kicks off with a violent clash involving the political party Tehreek-e-Labbaik, or TLP. But right after it happened, the official channels just went silent. That created this vacuum, right? And it got filled with all sorts of conflicting reports. So the big question we're digging into today is, what really went down in Murid?
So you've basically got two completely different stories here. On the one hand, you have this official information blackout, and on the other, you have these shocking allegations from a vlogger who's talking about a violent, state-led operation that resulted in a high number of casualties that were never reported.
All right, let's zero in on the Murid incident itself. Right at the heart of all this confusion is the fate of the TLP party's leadership after these clashes.
With no official word coming out, rumors just started flying everywhere. Were the party leaders injured? Were they arrested? Maybe abducted? Or did they somehow manage to escape completely? As you can tell from all these conflicting reports, nobody seemed to have a straight answer. Now, the source really hones in on one theory in particular. The idea that the leaders escaped all the way to Azad Kashmir, and they're just not buying it. They point to the massive security cordon and all the checkpoints in the area and ask a pretty reasonable question. How could anyone possibly get through all that without being noticed?
But it's not just about the fate of the leaders. This is where the story, according to the source, takes a really dark turn, and that's the number of casualties. So the source claims there was this wall of silence from the media, complete quiet, until one channel, Sama TV, apparently broke ranks and was the first to release casualty numbers, while all the other major outlets were still silent.
And that first TV report? It dropped a bombshell number from a very credible source, the Eddy Foundation. They're one of Pakistan's most respected rescue services, and they allegedly reported transporting over 150 people with gunshot wounds. But it doesn't stop there. The vlogger goes even further, saying they have their own anonymous sources from inside the police force, and these sources, they claim, provided an absolutely grim death toll, estimating anywhere from 60 to maybe even over 100 fatalities.
And then we get these really chilling details about the operation itself. It was allegedly overseen by some very high-ranking officials. We're talking 7 regional police officers and 2 inspector generals. The claims get even more specific, alleging that security forces were literally following blood trails into alleyways to find wounded people, only to then refuse them medical aid.
So, with all these incredibly serious claims on the table, the source makes a very clear demand: a judicial inquiry. A formal investigation led by a judge. They say it's the only way to cut through all the rumors and actually figure out what the facts are.
From there, the story pivots away from the incident itself and looks at the political fallout, specifically from former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who actually released a statement from prison.
Khan's statement from prison kicks off with this cricket metaphor for his party's new chief minister. He called him his opening batsman and told him to play freely, which is a pretty clear signal to go out there and act decisively. And then Khan zooms out. He condemns the violence, sure, but he also draws these parallels between how the TLP was treated and the pressure his own party has been under. He also really pushed back against this trend of labeling any political opponent a traitor, and then he walked this very fine line on the military, saying, hey, it's my military, but he doesn't support all of its policies. But Khan's message, at least according to the source, wasn't just about current events. It also included a pretty sharp and direct critique of the state's entire, long-standing counterterrorism strategy. Basically, what he's arguing is, look, we've been trying military force for decades, and it's just not working. His alternative is a political one: engage everybody, from the local tribes all the way to the government in Afghanistan, and try to find a real solution through dialogue. Now, this is where the vlogger brings it all back to the Murid incident, connecting it to what they describe as a kind of recurring state playbook. They allege there's a history of authorities planting false evidence on political opponents, and they suggest that the items supposedly found at the TLP leader's home fit this exact pattern. And then, for the final piece of this puzzle, the source zooms way out. They argue that what's happening inside the country is being mirrored by a huge, dramatic shift in Pakistan's foreign policy, especially when it comes to the conflict in Gaza.
The vlogger paints a really stark picture here.
On one side, you have countries like Spain and the UK calling for Israeli accountability, and on the other, they point to Pakistan's prime minister supposedly praising Donald Trump at the exact same time Trump was making these very strong pro-Israel statements.
So the point the vlogger is hammering home is that this isn't just a slip of the tongue. They're alleging it's evidence of a fundamental, totally unannounced shift in foreign policy, that Pakistan has basically ditched its historic pro-Palestine stance to get on the good side of the U.S.
So let's just pull all of this together. The story this source is telling is really woven from three massive allegations. One, a brutal and covered-up crackdown in Marique. Two, an ongoing pattern of suppressing anyone who disagrees politically. And three, a major, unannounced pivot in the country's foreign policy.
And all of this leaves us, and you, with a really tough question. When the official story is just silence, and you have these unverified reports alleging such serious, terrible events, how does anyone find the truth? That's really the core dilemma at the heart of this story from Marid Mweke.